What do you do when a company is losing billions of dollars, but every executive in the room says everything is fine? That was Ford. From the outside, it still looked powerful. The blue oval still shined. The factories still stood. The brand still carried history, pride, and global recognition. But inside, something was quietly dying. Not the buildings, not the logo, the culture. Because a dying culture rarely looks dead at first. People still come to work, they still sit in meetings, they still give updates, they still smile. But slowly, fear takes over. People stop telling the truth. Teams stop helping each other. Bad news gets hidden. Problems get painted green. And that is how great organizations begins to collapse quietly. This is the story of Ford, a giant drifting towards the edge. And this is the story of one leader who walked in and changed one thing. That changed everything. He made truth safe. That leader was Alan Mulally. And what he did at Ford is one of the greatest lessons in leadership, culture, and trust. By 2006, Ford was in serious trouble. Its market share was slipping, costs were rising, quality was inconsistent, losses were growing. But the deeper problem was not only financial, it was cultural. Ford was not acting like one company, it was acting like separate kingdoms. North America had its own priorities, Europe had its own thinking, other divisions protected themselves. Leaders defended their turf. The company had one name, but it was not moving like one team. And in that kind of environment, truth becomes slow. Some truths arrive late, some get softened, some never arrive at all. Inside Ford, people had learned a dangerous rule. If you show a problem, you become the problem. And once that rule enters a culture, the damage spreads fast. Meetings become theater, bad news gets hidden, leaders manage image instead of reality. So Ford did not just have a business problem, Ford had a fear problem. And fear is deadly in any organization because when people are afraid, they stop being honest. And when honesty dies, performance dies next. At that moment, Ford could have done what struggling companies often do: chooses another insider, use the same language, repeat the same habits, protect the same culture. Instead, Ford made a surprising choice. It chose Alan Mulally, not a car guy, an airplane guy. He came from Boeing, a world where complexity is extreme, safety is non negotiable, and the hidden problems can become disasters. That mattered because Alan had learned something important. Complex systems do not fail only because of technical mistakes, they often fail because people stop working together honestly. That belief had been forming inside him for years. Long before Ford and Boeing, Alan Mulally was just a young boy in Kansas. As a child, he often sat in the front row of church. That sounds like a small detail, but sometimes small details reveal big things. Most children prefer the back row where they can disappear. Alan sat in the front because he wanted to understand. He watched his minister closely. The man was not loud, not dramatic, not trying to impress people. But when he spoke, the room changed. People calmed down, worried faces softened, the emotional atmosphere shifted. And Alan noticed something powerful. A leader does not only give information, a leader changes the emotional weather. That lesson stayed with him. At home, his parents reinforced it in a quieter way. Their values were simple: show up, work hard, tell the truth, treat people with respect. Then another influence entered his life: President John F. Kennedy. When Kennedy spoke about going to the moon, Allen noticed something important. It was not presented as one man's dream, it was presented as a shared mission. That taught him another lesson: big missions only work when people feel they belong to them. So, from an early age, the two truths settled deep inside him. The church taught him what leadership does inside people. The president showed him what leadership does between people. So, years later, both rules would become essential at Ford. Allen studied aeronautical and astronautical engineering at the University of Kansas. And engineering teaches one hard lesson very quickly: reality does not care what you believe, reality only cares what is true. A wing works or it does not, a plane flies safely or it does not. You cannot persuade physics with confidence. You cannot defeat truth with excuses. Alan loved that kind of honesty because it trained him to respect facts. If an idea did not match reality, the idea was wrong, not reality. That became one of his greatest strengths. Later, he studied management at MIT Sloan. He was not leaving engineering behind, he was adding to it because bigger questions had started to trouble him. If smart people are everywhere, why do big projects still fail? Why do strong teams still break down? Why do organizations hide problems until it's too late? So slowly he realized something important. Machines fail because parts break. Organizations fail because behavior breaks. Engineering gave him structure, discipline, and facts. Leadership taught him about people, trust, and emotion. At Boeing, especially during the 777 program, he had built a discipline called working together. It was not just a slogan, it meant one shared plan, one shared set of facts, problems raised early, no blame, no hiding. And there he learned a lesson Ford would later need desperately. Hidden problems do not disappear, they grow. When people raise problems early, the organizations get stronger. When people hide them, it gets weaker. That became one of Alan Mulally's deepest beliefs. Trust is what holds people together when the work gets hard. By the early 2000s, Alan Mulally was leading Boeing commercial airplanes. He had built a reputation for calm, steady leadership, especially under pressure. In 2005, Boeing's board elected James McNerney as chairman, president, and CEO. Mulally stayed on and continued leading Boeing commercial airplanes until Ford called in 2006. That change of direction did not feel like a defeat. It felt like a new runway opening, one he never expected. And this is where life tests a person, not during applause, not during success, but during disappointment. Because disappointment has a way of changing people. Some become bitter, some shut down, Some stay in the job but leave emotionally. Alan didn't do that. He didn't attack the company, he didn't poison the relationships, he didn't burn bridges. He accepted the truth quietly. Maybe his journey would not end at Boeing. And sometimes a closed door is not rejection, sometimes it is redirection. Because far away in Dearborn, Michigan, one of the biggest names in the world was slowly bleeding and was about to need everything Alan had learned. In 2006, Ford made an unusual decision. Instead of choosing a traditional car guy, it chose an outsider from aviation. For Detroit, that felt risky, even strange. Alan Mulally had not grown up inside the car industry. He did not carry Ford's old internal habits. He brought different instincts. And when he arrived at Ford's headquarters, the glass house, he could feel two things at the same time: a company with extraordinary history and a company that was emotionally exhausted. He met brilliant engineers, committed workers, proud people who still believed in the Ford name. But he also saw tired managers, defensive leaders, teams that already heard speeches about change too many times. So he didn't begin with grand words. He listened. He visited plants. He walked the lines. He asked simple questions: what's working? What isn't working? What should I know that no one is saying? And the deeper truth became clear. Ford did not only need a better strategy, it needed a safer culture. Because before a company can improve performance, people must be able to speak honestly about reality. But before Ford could fully rebuild, it first had to survive. Ford was losing staggering amounts of money, not the kind of loss you fix with small cuts, not the kind of loss you fix by working harder. This was survival level bleeding. So Allen led Ford to make a painful decision early. The company borrowed about 23 billion US dollar, and to get that money, Ford mortgaged almost everything: factories, properties, assets, even the blue oval logo itself. That was not just finance, that was identity. The blue oval was pride, history, symbol, memory, and now that symbol became collateral. Inside Ford, you can imagine what that felt like. For many people, it felt like humiliation. For others, it felt like fear. For some, it felt like the beginning of the end. But Alan understood something crucial. When a patient is losing oxygen, you do not begin with surgery, you give oxygen first. So the loan was oxygen. It bought fraud, time, time to restructure, time to simplify, time to stop the bleeding, time to build a new way of working. Leadership is often not choosing between comfort and pain, it is choosing between two pains: the pain that may save you, or the comfort that quietly destroys you. Alan chose the pain that could save Ford. With breathing room secured, Alan did what great leaders do next. He did not just bring a plan, he brought a way of working. He brought his working together discipline from Boeing into Ford, not as a poster, not as a campaign, as a daily operating system. His beliefs were simple: everyone deserves to know the real plan. Everyone must see the same truth. Everyone must feel safe to speak. And everyone must treat each other with respect. But beliefs alone do not change culture. Beliefs must become structure. So Alan built structure. At the center of it was one weekly meeting, the business plan review, the BPR. Every Thursday, non optional, no deputies. If you owned a part of the business, you showed up, not to defend yourself, not to perform, not to blame someone else. You showed up to face reality together. Each leader had to present using a simple color code: green on track, yellow at risk, red in serious trouble. It sounds simple, but in a fearful culture, it is revolutionary because red is not just a color, red is exposure. And in Ford's old culture, exposure felt dangerous. So Allen protected the new behavior with clear rules: no sarcasm, no ambitious, no humiliation, no punishment for honesty. You listen, you ask, you help. From the outside, it looked like another meeting. But inside Ford, it was the beginning of a cultural reset. The first business plan reviews felt strange. On the factory floors, Ford was bleeding money. Plants were under pressure. Customers were choosing competitors. Losses were growing larger. But inside the meeting room, slide after slide glowed green. Green projects, green launches, green forecasts, green updates. It looked like success, but it did not feel like success. Alan sat quietly at the head of the table, watching. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. We are losing a huge amount of money. So, why is everything green? The room went silent. Not the silence of reflection, the silence of recognition, because everyone in that room understood the real truth. If I show yellow, I get questioned. If I show red, I get blamed. If I show trouble, I lose influence. If I show weakness, I become vulnerable. So people had learned to paint green over red. So Alan did not shout. He did not shame anyone. He did not explode. He simply kept asking for reality week after week, not with anger, with patience. And what he was really doing was radical. He was quietly declaring war on fear. Then one Thursday, something changed. Courage entered the room. Mark Fields, head of the Americas, was facing serious trouble. A major vehicle launch was at risk. Quality issues were growing. Timelines were slipping. As he prepared his slide, he stared at the color options: green, yellow, red. In the old culture, green meant safety, red meant danger. But the new culture was asking a different question: do you want protection or progress? Mark took a breath and he chose red. When his slide appeared on the screen, the room tightened. You could almost hear the unspoken thoughts. He's finished. This is why you never show red. Let's see what happens now. All eyes turned to Alan because this was not just about a slide. It was about whether truth was finally safe. Alan looked at the screen. Then he smiled. He began to clap. Mark, he said, thank you. This is great visibility. Now we can actually see what's going on. What do you need from us to help fix this? He did not ask, how did you let this happen? He asked, what do you need? Then he turned to the room. Who can help? Hands went up. People offered support, resources, ideas. And in that moment, something deeply shifted. An emotional law was rewritten. Old rule was if you show a problem, you are the problem. New rule, if you show a problem, we will help you solve it. This is how cultures begin to heal. Not when slogan is announced, not when poster is printed, but when the most powerful person in the room responds differently to the most honest person in the room. While Alan was rebuilding honesty inside meetings, he was also rebuilding clarity inside strategy. He gave Ford a simple rallying idea. One Ford, two words. But behind them was a complete reset. One team, one plan, one goal. One team meant no more mini kingdoms, no more internal tribes protecting turf. One plan meant no more hidden strategies, no more private agendas. One integrated business plan visible to all. One goal meant profitable growth for the whole system, not just one region, one brand, or one leader. To live this idea, Ford had to make painful choices. Jaguar was sold, Land Rover was sold, Volvo was sold, Mercury was shut down, Ford refocused on Ford and Lincoln. It pushed towards global platform instead of fragmented duplication. These were not just portfolio decisions, they touched identity. People mourned brands, people mourned roles, people mourned the past. But Alan understood something critical. You cannot heal what you refuse to simplify. You cannot become clear while trying to be everything. So slowly, as truth replaced fear and focus replaced confusion, Ford began to stand on something solid again, not illusion, reality. Then the world cracked. In 2008 and 2009, the global financial crisis hit hard. Credit tightened, consumers stopped spending, car sales dropped fast. Across the auto industry, fear spread. General Motors and Chrysler went bankrupt and sought US government help. Ford did not take a direct bailout, not because Ford was comfortable, it was under huge pressure too. But Ford had something that now became a shield: time. Years earlier, Allen had borrowed massive funds and mortgaged Ford's major assets, even the Blue Oval. At the time, that decision shocked people. Now it helped Ford survive. Still, survival was painful. Plants closed, jobs were lost, families suffered, communities felt the damage, and moments like this do not only test finances, they test culture. Because fear can easily return, blame can easily return, silence can easily return. But Alan kept doing something simple and powerful. He kept the rhythm. Thursday BPR continued. Even with chaos outside, he kept the habit. He kept the rules. He kept the tone. Calm, honest, steady. When the numbers were bad, he did not pretend they were good. But he did not panic either, because panic spreads faster than the bad news. Instead, he kept repeating a clear message. We have one plan. We will work it. We will get through this together. The crisis tested Ford hard. It bent, it hurt, it grieved. But it did not break. Then something small happened, but it meant everything. The numbers began to turn, not overnight, not magically, slowly. Losses started shrinking, stability started returning, then profit came back, then another profitable year, then another. To investors, it looked like a business turnaround. To employees, it felt deeply personal because when people survive years of fear and uncertainty together, recovery becomes more than performance. It becomes a shared emotional victory. Workers could tell their children, "We went through the worst years and we made it." Managers who once feared Red learned something unexpected. Honesty did not destroy them, it strengthened the company. And the biggest change was not just in profits, it was inside Ford's emotional system. From hiding to openness, from blame to help, from my division to our company. That is what cultural recovery feels like. Not perfection, but honesty strong enough to carry performance. As Ford's performance improved, something deeply symbolic happened. Ford's credit strength improved, pressure started lifting, and the Blue Oval was mortgaged to survive, came home. To outsiders, that may have looked like a technical milestone, but inside Ford, it felt personal because the Blue Oval was never just a logo, it was identity, pride, history. And now the company was not just surviving, it was proving itself. In 2009, Ford returned to profitability, reporting about 2.7 billion US dollar in full year net income. That alone was powerful. But the history did not stop there. In 2010, the recovery grew even stronger, with Ford reporting about $6.6 billion in full year net income. But these were not just numbers. To employee, they meant we told the truth. We walked together and it worked. So when the Blue Oval came home, it did not return as a symbol of pride alone. It returned as proof. Ford did not survive by hiding. It survived by facing reality early, telling the truth, and walking together. So, what is the real lesson of Alan Mulally and Ford? It is this: a company does not collapse only because of bad strategy. It collapses when fear makes honesty dangerous. And a company does not recover only because of a better plan. It recovers when leaders create psychological safety, a culture where people feel safe to tell the truth. That is what Alan Mulally did. He changed the emotional weather. He made honesty safe. He replaced blame with sport. He gave people one shared mission, one Ford. That is real leadership. Not just having answers, but creating an environment where truth can breathe. Because once truth becomes visible, what was broken can finally be faced. And once people stop hiding, organizations can finally begin to heal. Alan Mulally did not save Ford with noise. He saved it with calm, with discipline, with clarity, with trust. And in a world where many leaders still punish honesty, his story gives us one unforgettable reminder: when truth becomes safe, even a struggling giant can rise again.